Hello everyone, welcome to channel Qtomation. In last session we have seen about frame and iframes handling. So if you remember in session 30 we have seen about iframe handling, and in that example we have seen there is a frame tag. There was a frame tag which we have handled. So in today's session we will see about iframe tag. Now both are kind of a similar only. There is no change in any approach or any methods. So we will see about, so it's basically a different example with iframe tag. So in previous session also what we have seen is what is exactly iframe or frame. So in web development, a frame and iframe are both used to divide a web page into separate sections or frames that can load different content independently. And frames are typically used to show multiple web pages within a single web page. So we have seen the example as well. So what exactly is iframe is? So basically iframes or frames, they are used to divide web page into separate sections and we can load different content independently. We have seen the example where there is a parent page, and by using iframe, so these are basically individual separate iframes which are inside the parent page. And if you want to interact with the element which are present inside the iframe, now let's say there is a button or there is an input field or any other web element which is present inside the iframe, and if we want to interact with those elements, we cannot directly interact with them. So what should be the approach to interact with the web element present inside the iframe is, before interacting with elements inside a iframe or frame, first we have to switch the WebDriver's focus to that frame. So if there is an element inside this iframe 1 and I want to interact with that element, then first I have to switch the WebDriver focus to iframe 1, and after that I can perform any action on that web element. So we have to first switch the WebDriver's focus to that frame. We can use switch to .frame method to do that. So we have seen the example as well. We can use switch to .frame method to do that, and we can pass the frame web element, and after switching, so for switching what we can do is we can pass the frame as a web element, or we can pass iframe's name, or we can also pass index or id to that method. So we can use any one of these four things we can use as a value to pass the control to specific iframe. So we can either use frame as a web element. In previous example, in previous session, we have already seen the example in which we have passed frame as a web element, and we have also seen the example, in the same example we have also seen how to pass index. In today's example we will see how to use name and id. And once we switch to the frame or iframe, you can interact with elements inside it as you would with any other normal element. After you finish interacting with the element inside the frame, we have to again switch the WebDriver focus back to the default content, that is main page, to interact with elements outside the frame basically. So whatever elements present inside the parent frame, if you want to interact with those elements, we have to switch back to main page. And for that, which method we can use? We can use switch to .default content method. So default content method is used for this. So I will show one more example about iframe or frame handling today. So what I will do, I will use this web page. So I am just opening one web page. If you see on this web page, there are 3 iframes. This is the first iframe. This is the second iframe, in which there is a text called iframe text. And if you see this checkbox which is inside the iframe, now this is the third iframe. If I want to click on this checkbox, I have to first switch to this iframe, and then only I can click on this checkbox. So in this example, I want to perform two actions. So in this page, I want to perform two actions. First action is, I want to fetch or print the text which is present inside this iframe. Now this is one iframe. I want to print or I want to fetch the text present inside this iframe. That is the first action I want to do. And another action I want to do is, I want to click on this checkbox which is present inside another iframe. So this is our main web page in which there are three iframes, 1, 2 and 3. How to confirm whether they are iframe or not is, what we can do is, we can simply inspect the element, right click, click on inspect element, and then I am just typing Control F 2 times forward slashes, and I am using iframe, right? So I am searching for any iframe tags whether they are present inside the web page or not. So if you see in this HTML code, we have found three iframe tag element. So if you just hover on it, if you see, so this is the first iframe, one of three, that is the first iframe. That is basically this one. This is the first iframe. Then this is the second iframe in which the text is present, and the third one is this one. Now in the third iframe there is a checkbox which I want to check by using Selenium script. So these are the three iframes which are present inside this main web page. Now if I want to interact with those elements, if I want to fetch this text and print in the console, I want to fetch this text and print on the console. So to do that, I have to first switch to this iframe and then I can fetch that text. Similar to this iframe, again I want to switch to this iframe and then I can fetch out that text. Now what I will do is, I will just go to PyCharm. Now let's see practically how we can do it. Let's create a new Python file. And this time I will be using iframe demo 2. So this is the name of the Python file which we have created. Inside this I am just copying some code which we have used in our previous sessions as well. This is basically a starting part of the code in which we are importing some packages like webdriver, options and service class. So we have created options class object, and in which we are passing detach value as true. Now why we are doing this? We are doing this whenever this value is true, it will keep the browser open after the script end. So once we execute the script will automatically close the browser instance once all the code is executed. But I want to keep the browser instance open. So for that I am just adding this option. In options class object I am just adding experimental option detach value as true. And next one is service class object. I have created one service class object in which I am passing the executable path. This is the path to chromedriver.exe, that is browser driver. So on this location that browser driver is present. So that location which we are passing here in service class object. After that I am creating a driver class instance, or we can create a driver class object. So I am just creating the reference variable here, driver equals to webdriver.chrome, in which I am passing this service class object as well as options, right? So we are passing two parameters, service class object and Chrome options. These two options we are passing it. And then I am declaring implicit wait. So I am just keeping 5 seconds as an implicit wait. After that I want to open this web page. That's why I have put driver.get and the URL of the page which we want to open. So once we execute this script, it will launch the browser and it will open this web page. Now after opening this web page, what I want to do is, I want to do two actions. So first action is, I want to fetch this iframe text. I want to fetch the iframe text from this iframe. So what is the process? First we have to find, or we have to switch the focus, WebDriver focus, to this iframe. So let's try to identify this iframe. So I will again inspect element. Let's inspect the page. I will just hover on this iframe and let's see what identifier we can use. So if you see, this is the iframe. In last session, we have seen the example in which there was a frame tag, and that frame tag was not having any ID or name attribute. But this time, in this example, if you see, there is a iframe tag which is having ID as well as name. If you see, it is having ID as an attribute and name as an attribute. So we can use ID or name as well. So we can either use ID or name. So what I will do for this iframe, I will use ID as a attribute to find the iframe. So I will just use, first we have to switch the focus, right? So what I will do, driver dot switch to. So first we have to switch the WebDriver focus to that frame, and for that we can use any attribute. So we can use ID or name attribute for switching the focus. So that frame is having ID and name both. So I will use driver dot switch to dot frame, and in this I can directly pass ID or name. I can pass ID or name. So what is the ID for this frame? I will just pass the ID. So what is the ID? My frame 2. I am just copying this value and let's paste it here. So it will shift. So basically it will shift the focus of the WebDriver from main page to that specific iframe. And after switching the focus to the iframe, now we can simply print that text. So I will just store that text. Let's say iframe underscore text. That is the one variable I am declaring, in which I will just find the text of that element, right? So I want to find out this text. So let's find XPath for this element, right? So this is the text which I want to fetch out. So if you see, this is the text, this is the element. So H4 is the tag name. This is the tag name. So I will just right click on it and I will just copy XPath. I am just copying the XPath. Now just to verify, I am again putting Ctrl F, Ctrl V, and this XPath should able to find out that text. So I am just copying this XPath and I will just find this here, driver dot find element by dot XPath, comma, I am just putting the XPath. So it will find out that text. So first we have switched the focus to the iframe in which the text is present, and once we have switched the focus to that iframe, we are again finding that specific text web element and we are storing that text into iframe underscore text. So this is the variable which is storing that text value. But before that, this is basically locating that text element, but I want to fetch out the text. So I will use dot text method. So dot text method will fetch out that text and it will store in iframe underscore text. And to print that, I will simply use print method. So we can simply use print iframe underscore text. So this is the variable. We can use any value here. We can use any variable value here. So I am just using iframe underscore text. So it should print that specific text present inside the iframe, right? So after that, let's execute this file and let's see whether it is able to switch the focus to that iframe and it can print the iframe text. So I am just putting some part here. So text from iframe is, I am just putting text from iframe is, comma, and this should print that text. So now let's execute the file. So it will launch the browser. It will open that web page and it will fetch this text and it should print on the console. So I am just minimizing it. If you see, text from iframe is iframe text. So that is correctly fetching the text which is present inside this iframe. Now this is the iframe in which that text is present, and via script we are successfully able to fetch that text. So this is the printed text, iframe text. So this is the text which we have fetched from that iframe. So that is the first action which we want to perform. Now what is the second action which we want to perform on the iframe is, on the same web page, I want to find out this iframe. So this checkbox is inside another iframe. If you see, this is another iframe in which that specific checkbox is present. I want to click on this checkbox. So we have seen before switching to another iframe, first we have to again go back to our previous content, right? So we have to again go back to main page. If you have remembered that after switching to iframe, we again have to go back to main page and then again switch back to iframe 2. For example, if you see, this is the parent page. We have to first switch the focus to iframe 1. We can interact with the elements present in iframe 1. Then we have to again go back to parent page. We cannot directly jump from iframe 1 to iframe 2 because they are separate from each other. So first we have to switch to parent page, and then again we have to switch the focus of the WebDriver to iframe 2, and then we can interact with the elements present inside the iframe 2. So now the similar situation here. So if you see, we have first opened the web page, then we have shifted the focus of WebDriver to iframe, this iframe, in which we have passed the ID of this iframe. Then we have fetched the text from this iframe, and now I want to check on this checkbox, right? So for that, I have to first go back to parent page again and then move the focus to this iframe, and then I can interact with this checkbox. So now for that, what I have to do is, so here in the script again I will use driver dot switch to default content. So it will switch the focus from iframe to parent page. So it will again go back to parent page, and after that we can again switch the focus driver dot switch to dot frame, and now we have to pass identifier of that frame. So how to find that identifier is, let's inspect this web page. This checkbox is present inside this iframe. If you see, this is the iframe. In this iframe, there is also ID as well as name. There is a ID as well as name. So for previous iframe we have used ID. So for this iframe I will use name. So let's use the name. So frame name 3. So this is the name. So I will simply pass this name driver dot switch to dot frame and name of the frame, name of the iframe. So it will switch the focus of the WebDriver to that specific iframe. After switching the focus to that iframe, what is the action we want to perform? We want to check that checkbox. We want to click on that checkbox. So let's try to find out XPath or any locator for that XPath, for that checkbox. So let's hover on it. If you see, that checkbox is having ID as checkbox 6. So you can use any locator. We can write relative XPath for that, or we can simply use ID directly. So I am just using ID. I will use driver dot find element by dot ID, and what is the ID value? I am just pasting it, checkbox 6, and we want to click on it. So I will just use dot click. So this should click on that checkbox. So now let's execute this script. So what this script will do is, it will launch the web browser, it will open this web page, then it will switch the focus of the WebDriver to this iframe. It will find that text, it will print that text, then it will switch the context back to parent page by using default content method since we have used here. After that, it will find and switch the focus of the WebDriver to frame name 3, and it will find that checkbox and it will click on that checkbox. So that these two actions should be performed once we execute this script. So again, let's execute this file. It will launch the web browser now. It will fetch the text and it should click on that checkbox. Just keep looking at that checkbox. If you see, it automatically clicked on this checkbox. So this action is successfully performed. Now what I want to do is, I want to again, so this is the iframe. So we are still inside this iframe. So focus is inside this iframe. Now I want to pass some text. I want to pass some text inside this text input field. Now this text input field is outside of that iframe, right? So it is not inside that iframe. It is basically on main page. It is basically on our parent page. So if I want to pass some value here, let's say I want to pass some test value here, I have to shift the focus again back to parent page, and then I can interact with the elements which are present inside this parent page. So how we can do that? I am just closing it. So after this line, what we have to do? We have to again go back to parent page. So I will just use driver dot switch to, which method we can use to go back to parent? Basically default content. It will go to main page, and after going to that main page, we will simply find out that element, driver dot find element. Let's try to find some locator for this text input field. ID is my text input. If you see, ID is my text input. So I am just going to PyCharm by dot ID. So I am just finding that text field by using ID locator, and then we can pass some text value by using send keys method. I am just passing some test value. So it should pass this test value as a string into that input text field. So let's execute this file, and all the three actions should be performed. Let's try to execute this file. So it will launch the web browser. It will open that web page. It will first fetch the text from that iframe. It will first fetch, then it will click on the checkbox, and it is passing the value to text input field as well. If you see, I am minimizing it. So if you see, checkbox is clicked, text value is also passed, and if you see on console, that text is also printed. That means all the three things are performed successfully. So this was the simple example in which we have used iframe name and iframe ID as a locator. We have used name and ID this time. In our previous session, we have used iframe or frame as a web element, and we have also seen about index as well. So I will just revise one more time. So what is iframe? Iframe is basically used to divide the web page into separate sections or frames that can load different content independently. And normally iframes or frames are used to show multiple web pages within a single web page. And before interacting with elements inside the frame or iframe, we have to first switch the focus of the WebDriver to that frame. Then we can interact with the elements, and to switch that we can use switch to .frame method. And in this switch to .frame method, we have to pass some identifier. We can either pass name, we can either pass ID, or we can also use that frame as a web element, and we can also pass index as well. And after switching to that frame, we can interact with the elements inside that. And after interacting with those elements, if I want to go back to main page, we have to again switch the WebDriver focus back to the default content by using switch to .default content method. And we can interact with the elements present inside the parent page. And again, if you want to switch to another iframe, we can again use switch to .frame method, and we can again pass any one of the 4 value from these identifiers. So that's all about iframes or frames. In the coming session, we will see about nested iframe and how to handle nested iframe in Selenium. So thank you for watching this video. Kindly subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you have any feedback for that. And keep liking my content and keep sharing my content, because that really motivates me to make new videos time to time. So thank you everyone.